There's a job on the Princess I've not been able to do that I've been wanting to find the time to do, which has been entirely dependent on it not raining or being a storm with a name. The suspension needs topping up. This is a normal thing with Hydragas cars. It's part of the way the suspension is. There's a couple of things that can cause it. One is failing suspension, which I really hope it isn't. And the other is just when the car's parked up for a long time, the fluid in the system sort of goes away. Normally, when you do the suspension on a Princess, there's a couple of Schrader valves that live in this area. Because normally there's a steel pipe that runs from here, down, under the car, and all the way to the back suspension. On my car, unfortunately, as happens to quite a few Princesses, the steel pipe had rotted out, and you can't buy replacements. I haven't been able to find anybody that does a proper custom replacement yet. If I do one day, they'll go back on. So instead, as I've mentioned in previous videos, mine has these blocks. And these blocks screw directly onto the displacer, which lives inside this pocket, and has a Schrader valve in the end. So that one just does this corner of the car. The other block is here, just by the screen wash, and as with the other side, that just does this corner of the car. For the rear end, you can just see this piece here. That's a hydraulic line which screws into the displacer here, and then is cable tied onto the side of the fuel tank flange here, because that was the best place to put it. This bit's the exhaust, that's the boot floor. So that's how you top up the rear end. And as with the front, both rear corners are independent. It's not the best system, but it's worked for a few years now, and I don't really have any complaints. With the camera set level to the ground, you can see I've lined it up with the top of the garage roof there. You can just about make out that this side of the car is lower than this side of the car. I've got the camera flat with the garage roof line here, and you can just see the Princess has a tiny bit of a lean. Some days it's more obvious than others. It's quite a warm day today, so it's a little bit more pronounced. I'm going to leave the passenger side the height it is. I'm happy with this side, but this side is just a bit too low, so we're going to bring this side up to match. First task is determining how high our suspension is or how low. Now normally you'd take the hubcap off, you would measure from the centre of the hub to the lip of the wheel arch. From memory it's 14.5 inches. So let's find out how high we actually are on this side. I'm going to measure from the bottom lip of the centre of the hubcap, and I'm going to make sure when I measure the other side, I measure in the same way. That will give me the same measurement, and then I don't need to take the hubcap off. So we're looking at 16.5 inches, the arch lip from that point. Now if I move that up to roughly the middle of the hubcap, it's about 14 1/8. On the driver's side, it's about 15 3/4. So it's a good bit lower than the passenger side. And from the centre, about 13 1/4. So the driver's side needs to come up a bit. I'm fortunate enough to have one of the old Daleks. There's a lot of different hydroelastic and Hydragas suspension pumps out there. They all do the same thing. Well, most of them do the same thing. Essentially, they're just a fluid pump. So you pump the lever and it puts the fluid in. This one is an original style. So when you do a full service, one side does vacuum and one side does pump. So you can actually suck all of the old fluid out of the system, completely clear it, put some cleaner, whichever fluid you end up using, back in, flush it out, and make sure all of the dirt and any corrosion, anything that's a problem in the system can get flushed out. Then you connect it up and you pump it back up again. Now, as I've said, I'm not doing a full service on this, I'm just doing a top up, and the reason for that is before the car was laid up it had a full suspension service. It dropping a little bit on one side is really normal, so a top up is all that's really needed in this instance. You are supposed to do a suspension flush and service. Well, the service intervals for it, I'd have to look in the book to remind myself what they are, but if you do it regularly, generally your suspension stays in good health. On the end of the line you have this connector, a little swivel lock here, so you can connect up to your Schrader valve, and this stops all of the fluid just coming straight out, so you can lock it on and off, and your fluid goes in the top bit here. Fluid is surprisingly readily available. I just use this silver hook stuff. I suspect this is actually antifreeze. I don't know for certain, but I really strongly suspect it is. But that said, don't just put regular blue or pink antifreeze in your system. Get the proper stuff, whatever you go with. Don't use LHM, don't use engine oil, and don't use water. They don't work. You need suspension fluid. It's a very similar composition to antifreeze, which is, well, seems to be what it was based on. Well, that did not go well. I connected the connector, and it broke. And now I can't get fluid in, all I can do is get fluid out. And now the suspension is comically low. Great. Those connectors are not cheap, and I'm going to have to order a new one. We'll come back to this job another day. For now, I can't drive my car. So that was a less than ideal outcome. What should have happened there is I should have connected the thing, it shouldn't have leaked, and I should have been able to pump the suspension up quite quickly and got it back up to a decent level. Because it's only dropped such a small amount, it doesn't really take very much fluid even to get it up to where it needs to be. The Princess system runs at around about 400 psi, and the more that you put in, the more pressure you put in, the higher the suspension goes. But it is a balancing act. Hydragas suspension is a little bit strange if you're unfamiliar with it. It's a little bit strange even if you are familiar with it. It's similar to the Citroen system, the hydropneumatic system, in that it relies on fluid under pressure to provide your suspension, and when you go over a bump it displaces that fluid to absorb the bump. Where the Citroen system is different is that's basically powered by a pump. So on earlier Citroens, the reason that they sink when they're parked is because the pump isn't running and the pressure can gradually leak out of the system and the fluid returns to the reservoir. You start the car up, basically the engine that powers the pump is then running, and the pressure returns, and the car rises up. This is also why you can raise and lower the suspension on a Citroen, but you can't in the same way on a Hydragas car. Now the difference between Hydragas and hydroelastic is another thing. Hydroelastic is the earlier system, and that just uses fluid. Hydragas uses gas and fluid together. So on the Princess, the displacers are like, they almost look like a peanut made out of metal. Because one of the ends of the peanut, if you like, is full of nitrogen gas, and the other end is full of the green fluid. The way that it then makes use of this system is the gas can compress more than the liquid can, and that gives you that additional damping as you're driving over bumps and whatever. The hydroelastic system doesn't have the gas and is criticised sometimes for being a bit bouncy, and that's part of the reason why. So Hydragas is like the most updated version of that system. It's not the same as they're used in Rolls-Royces. That is based on the Citroen system, the hydropneumatic system, and uses much of the same components, the Hydragas and hydroelastic system is unique to British Leyland. Unfortunately, part supply is very, very poor. You're reliant entirely on second-hand units, and because of the way that they're made, you can't really rebuild them. Once a unit fails, that's it, it's gone. Currently, there's no way to replace the rubber diaphragm inside that separates the fluid and the gas components. You can still drive the car with a failed unit, but it's like driving a car with, well, no shock absorbers. It's really very unpleasant. And at speeds over 30 miles an hour, the handling can be a little bit predictable because it's bouncing off the bump stops too much. So on my car, I'm pretty sure the suspension hasn't failed. I'm pretty sure this is just the usual thing with Princesses and any Hydragas car where when you park them up for a while, the fluid sort of goes away. Sometimes it leaks out. That doesn't seem to be the case on this one. Sometimes it just sort of evaporates, I assume. Like when you park a car up and it's got antifreeze in the system and you come back and it's full of crystals instead of water several years later. Same principle. So it's nothing to really worry about. The trouble is now, because the front end of the car has dropped so far, I can't actually turn the wheel without it fouling the wheel arch, which is a bit of an issue. So until I've got a replacement part for the pump, I'm now grounded, which is not ideal. But my legs work. Most of the things I need are within, well, almost within walking distance, not comfortable walking distance, so I'll manage. And if I get really desperate, Pat can give me a lift in the van. This is a problem of my own making. I should have left well alone, I suppose, but never mind. I think the part I need is around about £80. I will double check that when I'm online. Oh well, these things are sent to testers. One good thing though, the fluid that came out looked as new as it did when I put it in, so clearly the system is still nice and clean. Got to look for the bright side. New hose fitting has arrived. They've actually come down in price at the moment. This was nearer 50 than 80, which is good. And now I'm looking at how to swap the pipes over. This one here goes all the way to the connector. That's for the pumping up side. This one has already been replaced. This is the vacuum side. But they should be the same fitting. So this is inside the Churchill pump. It's upside down at the moment. And I've got to disconnect this fitting here and that fitting there, and basically swap them over. I'm going to send this pipe, the pumping up pipe, away and get one of these newer ones made to replace it. Got a little bit of clean up to do and just sluice that down, treat it like antifreeze. The good thing is I've got the pipe successfully swapped over, which screws on down there. It's quite difficult to get in, but it is on there. I think this line is from Pertec, who do custom hydraulic hoses. On the vacuum side, that's where it was connected, so we're just leaving that open for now. No harm's going to come to that. That will be fine. I can then send off this line and get that remade properly. The problem I have is these components. This is the adapter that steps the new hydraulic line down to this, but the thread on the end of that is not the same as the thread in this adapter. It's very close. I've got a feeling this is metric and this is imperial, and that's why I've got a mismatch. So I'm going to have to send that off as well so that I can get a proper adapter, and that's just going to take some time. So even though I have a working pump and I have the car where there's nothing actually wrong with the suspension, until I've got these parts, I can't actually fix it. It's a month later. Things just take time, I guess. Anyway, these are the brand new pipes, and these are from Churchill. They're the same as the ones I got before. I got 2 spares just in case. The awkward thing is getting everything connected, and I wanted to run both pipes through the back, but I don't have a drill bit that big, and I don't have anything to open this out, so the pipes just come out the bottom, apart from this one, which is the vacuum line. I am having an issue where the pump line, I can't get it to fully seal. I've put some PTFE tape on it, but the nut on the end of the hose is interfering with the brass. So I can get it close, I just want this pumped up. I'm going to fiddle with this properly later. For now it works okay. So it's not ideal. Happily, this connector does fit, does seem to work. I've purged the air out the line into here, so I'm not putting air in the system. And the bucket's under there, which I should have done when I first tested it, so I'll have to wash this down, but the bucket's there just to catch anything that drips out. It's not terrible. I don't think it's going to put air in the system, it's just not perfect. The big problem with high pressure stuff is as soon as you put any pressure on a minor weep like this has, it becomes a leak. Let me show you what happens when I tighten in that connector. That's no good. I'm going to have to, I don't know, take this pump apart a bit and try and get that connection tightened up further. I've clearly not got it tight enough. A bit tricky to do this one-handed, and I can't set the tripod up where I want to. So one thing you have to do with these connectors first is unscrew this T-bar, and then you screw this piece onto the Schrader valve. Once that's tightened down, you then screw that down, and that pushes the pin in the Schrader valve so it's open and you can put the fluid in. Then remember to unscrew that before you unscrew that when you remove it, otherwise you'll end up with high pressure fluid everywhere, which you don't want. The problem is this connection here, and this nut is just fouling on this brass face here, and that's stopping me tightening it up far enough. There we go, you can see it now. Now with LHM being bright green, you can actually see where the leak is, which is handy. It's definitely coming from that point. I've had a look with it off camera. All the other connections seem to be okay. It probably doesn't need much to tighten it up, but I think I'm going to have to take this apart a bit to get the access, because it's very tightly packed in here and the angles are very awkward. Originally it was more like the brass connector there on the nylon line. These hydraulic hoses are much larger, so that brass one would have cleared. These don't. Now, a friend of mine did restore one of these. We do know these seal because his pump works perfectly fine. Mine hasn't had any work, this is the first work it's had, so just a case of trying to figure everything out. It's just slowing me down. With the hose removed, you can see just here there's a groove. That's where that nut's actually hitting. Now if I relief that a little bit, the point on the nuts will actually clear that, and I can get that tightened down properly. When I came to undo it, it really wasn't as tight as I was expecting it to be. I don't think it's a fault with the pipe. I think it's just the fact that this was built with different fittings way back in whenever these things were built. And this one could be from the 60s. I don't know. I think I've got it. I've released the pressure on the valve thing. It's not gushing out here. There's an occasional drip, but that might be the fluid that's actually inside all of this box. So
I'm going to pump it and see what happens. Hopefully we'll be okay. When you're pumping it up, not much happens for ages, and then it'll go up all at once. So this dial here tells us how much pressure is in the system, and normally this system runs at about 400 psi, which seems quite a lot, but that's how it runs. And at the moment, well, it's around about 150-ish. Put a bit more fluid in. Always keep an eye on your fluid level because you don't want it sucking air in. I didn't want to put a lot in until I knew I didn't really have any leaks. I think we're good. There we go, it's about 200. That's 300. There we go. We're at about 380. That's 400 on my gauge, so I'm going to check the measurements. That's 13 1/4. Goodness. Right, that's about 14 1/2, which is about spot on. Ooh. No drama, no fuss. That now drives much better. It rides smoother than it did, which is nice, but the back now feels a bit crashy, so I'll do the back another day. I'm not going to fiddle with this anymore today. Still, I'm happy it's done, and now that I've got a working pump, I can do the service that this car needs at any point. I should really wash it.